The studio photograph from 1904 appeared perfectly harmless at first glance, but the girl's hands would later reveal a frightening detail. At the Boston Historical Archive, Professor David Richardson carefully arranged the newly acquired collection of vintage photographs across the polished surface of his desk. Each fragile image was a window into America's past, a silent story waiting to be read. The late afternoon sun, filtering through the tall office windows, cast pools of golden light upon the sepia-toned images that had arrived that very morning from the Peton estate sale. Dozens of typical family portraits from the early 1900s lay before him, but one photograph immediately captured his scholarly attention. It wasn't for any obvious anomaly, but rather for its unsettling perfection. Dated to 1904, the studio portrait depicted a young girl, perhaps 12 or 13 years of age, seated in an ornate Victorian chair. She was positioned against a painted backdrop depicting an idyllic, pastoral scenery. She was dressed in a pristine white dress with delicate lace trim, her dark hair arranged in the elaborate ringlets that were so fashionable for children of wealthy families in that era. Her expression was serene, almost angelic, yet her large, dark eyes seemed to gaze directly at the viewer with an unsettling, penetrating intensity. Everything about the photograph, from the expensive fabric of her dress to the impeccable quality of the studio work, screamed of privilege and cultivated innocence. The photographer had clearly been a master of his craft, capturing every minute detail with remarkable clarity despite the technical limitations of early 20th century equipment. The girl's pose was flawlessly composed, her back was straight, her feet positioned with precision on the small velvet stool placed before the chair. His research assistant, Maria, had noted while placing it with the others, another donation from the Peton collection. The family made their fortune in textile manufacturing. This appears to be their daughter, Adelaide, based on the inscription on the back. David turned the heavy cardstock over and, squinting slightly, read the faded cursive script written in brown ink, Adelaide Peton, age 12, October 15, 1904. Our precious angel. The handwriting was elegant and feminine, undoubtedly that of a devoted mother documenting a cherished moment in her daughter's childhood. The date placed the photograph squarely during the height of the Progressive Era, a time when affluent families often commissioned such elaborate portraits to document their children's growth and social standing. As David began the meticulous process of cataloging the image for the archive's database, something about the girl's positioning began to nag at the edges of his perception. While her face displayed perfect composure and her posture was flawlessly ramrod straight, there was something about the way her hands rested in her lap that seemed subtly unnatural. The positioning appeared deliberate, almost studied, as if she had been given very careful and specific instructions on exactly how to place them. Most children in formal portraits from this era looked stiff and visibly uncomfortable, clearly struggling to maintain the required pose for the long exposure times necessary. But Adelaide appeared completely at ease, as if sitting in perfect, motionless stillness for extended periods was second nature to her. There was something profoundly unsettling about such preternatural composure in someone so young. Reaching for his professional magnifying glass, the same tool he had relied upon for 15 years of archival work, David prepared to examine thousands of historical photographs for signs of damage, alteration, or hidden details that could provide deeper insight into the subjects' lives. He positioned the lens directly over Adelaide's hands, adjusting the beam of his desk lamp to eliminate any shadows that might obscure the finer details. The girl's hands were folded neatly in her lap, her fingers interlaced in a pose that initially appeared perfectly conventional for a formal portrait of the era. Her white cotton gloves, socially appropriate for a girl of her standing, covered her hands completely, as was proper decorum for young ladies during such photo sessions. The gloves themselves were clearly of excellent quality, evidenced by the delicate pearl buttons at the wrists and the fine, even stitching that spoke of expensive craftsmanship. However, as David studied the image with intensified focus, he noticed something peculiar about the way the gloves conformed to her hands. While the right glove appeared smooth and perfectly fitted, the left glove seemed to possess an unusual bulkiness around the palm and fingers, as if something concealed beneath the fabric was causing it to strain slightly. The distortion was so subtle it would be completely invisible to a casual observer. But under the unwavering scrutiny of magnification, it became unmistakable. "That's odd," David murmured to himself, his brow furrowing as he adjusted the focus of his glass. He had examined countless photographs of Victorian-era children, and their clothing was typically impeccably fitted, especially for formal portraits where every aspect of appearance was paramount. The Peaton family's considerable wealth would have absolutely ensured that Adelaide's entire outfit, down to her gloves, was perfectly tailored for the occasion. David then reached for his digital camera, equipped with a macro lens specifically designed for detailed archival photography. As he captured the image at an extremely high resolution, focusing particularly on the girl's gloved hands, he began to notice other subtle details that had escaped his initial examination. The left glove not only appeared bulky but also seemed to have a faint discoloration near the wrist area, darker spots that could have been stains of some kind. The staining pattern was irregular and appeared to have been present when the photograph was originally taken, rather than being a result of age or deterioration over the past century. David had seen similar staining on historical garments exposed to various substances, but determining the exact nature of these stains from a photograph would require a deeper, more specialized investigation. His examination then drifted back to Adelaide's expression. While it appeared serene at first glance, under this heightened scrutiny, it held a quality that made him increasingly uncomfortable. Her smile seemed fixed, not quite reaching her eyes, which held a distinct coldness that was deeply disturbing in someone so young. There was something knowing and calculating about her gaze, as if she was acutely aware of the dark secrets the camera could not, or would not, capture. Unable to shake his growing unease, David decided to delve into the history of the Peaton family and their daughter, Adelaide. The Historical Archive's extensive genealogy collection included detailed records of many prominent Boston families from the early 1900s, and the Peatons' wealth and social status meant they would undoubtedly be well documented in newspaper society pages and public records. David's initial research confirmed what he had suspected about the family's prominence. Harrison Peaton had built a formidable textile empire that employed hundreds of workers in factories throughout New England. The family resided in a grand mansion on Beacon Hill and were active fixtures in Boston's vibrant social and cultural life. Mrs. Zelander Peaton was widely known for her extensive charity work and for hosting elaborate parties for the city's elite. Adelaide was their only child, born in 1892, which indeed made her 12 years old at the time of the photograph, consistent with the inscription on the back. However, as David delved deeper into the newspaper archives, he began to uncover a series of disturbing reports from the period surrounding the photograph's date. The Boston Globe from October 1904 contained several articles about a string of mysterious accidents and deaths that had occurred within the Peaton household's immediate social circle. "Maria, look at this," David called, his voice tight as his assistant approached his desk. He had spread out photocopies of several newspaper clippings. 3 separate incidents involving the Peaton family's acquaintances, all within 6 months of when this photograph was taken. The first incident involved the family's previous governess, a Miss Catherine Walsh, who had died in September 1904 after a tragic fall down the main staircase in the Peaton mansion. The newspaper reported it as a dreadful accident, noting that Miss Walsh had been with the family for 2 years and was considered virtually part of the household. The second incident occurred in November 1904, when a neighbor's prized dog was found dead in the Peatons' garden under mysterious circumstances. The third was the death of a young stable hand named Thomas, who worked in the Peaton stables and was found drowned in the Charles River in December 1904. 3 tragic deaths in just 4 months, all connected to the same family, Maria observed, her eyes scanning the clippings with a growing sense of dread. That seems like an unusually concentrated string of misfortune, even for that era when workplace safety and medical care were far less advanced than they are today. David nodded grimly. And look at the chronology. The governess died just 3 weeks before Adelaide's portrait was taken. If this photograph was taken on October 15, as inscribed, then Miss Walsh died on September 24. Adelaide would have been deeply affected by losing her governess so immediately before the photo session. The newspaper account of Miss Walsh's death was brief, but it contained troubling elements. According to the report, She had been discovered at the bottom of the main staircase early in the morning by other household staff. The article noted that she had been in good health and had no discernible reason for being on the stairs at that particular hour, especially since her bedroom was located on the same floor as Adelaide's nursery and schoolroom. This discovery propelled David's investigation further. He turned to the Boston Public Library's extensive newspaper archives, where he spent hours scrolling through the microfilm records from the autumn of 1904. What he unearthed painted an increasingly troubling portrait of a young woman whose life had ended under circumstances that, while officially ruled an accident, contained numerous disturbing inconsistencies. Catherine Walsh had been 23 years old at the time of her death, a well-educated young woman from a respectable middle-class family who had been employed as Adelaide's governess for nearly 2 years. According to the society pages, she had been highly regarded by the Peaton family and had been instrumental in Adelaide's education, teaching her literature, music, and all the social graces expected of a girl from her elevated position. However, David discovered that in the weeks immediately preceding her death, Miss Walsh had written several private letters to her sister in New York, letters in which she expressed a growing and palpable concern about her position within the Peaton household.